Spoiled owner's son tried to replace me with AI after 13 years saving the company. So I showed the board exactly how much money I was saving. Before I start telling my story, tell me where you're watching this video from. Let's go. My name is Rachel Morrow, and for 13 years I was the person who kept one of the country's biggest logistical nightmares running without anyone knowing I existed. I work as night operations director for Skybridge Airlines, a mid-sized airline that operates mainly on the East Coast and Midwest of the United States. My office is in an ugly gray concrete building in Newark, New Jersey, exactly 12 minutes from the airport. The place has no windows. It has a permanent smell of old coffee, damp industrial carpet, and the metallic sweat of people working under constant pressure. This is where I live. Not literally, but almost. My shift starts at 11 at night and ends when the sun is already high enough to make me feel like a vampire coming out of the tomb. I work the shift nobody wants, the hours when planes need to be positioned for the first morning flights, when storms cross the country without warning, when pilots call in sick at 3 in the morning, and I need to find replacements before an Airbus A320 full of furious passengers gets stuck in Cincinnati. People think planes fly because of fuel and aerodynamics. Wrong. Planes fly because there are people like me, hidden in unglamorous bunkers, typing codes into old systems, moving pieces on an invisible board, ensuring chaos doesn't win. And chaos always wants to win. My system is called OptiCore. It's an operational management platform that was developed in 2003 by a software company that went bankrupt in 2008. Since then, nobody knows exactly how that shit works. Except me. I know every shortcut, every flaw, every secret command that isn't in any manual. I spent years learning to dance with this digital monster. It's temperamental, slow, prone to crashing at the worst possible moments. But if you know how to talk to it, if you feed it the right data in the right order, it works. And I always make it work. This Wednesday started like all the other Wednesdays of the last 5 years. I arrived at the office at 10:45 at night. The parking lot was empty except for 3 cars. My 2011 Honda Civic with a dent in the back door that I never fixed, Jerry's pickup truck, my shift supervisor, and Sandra's Nissan, the crew coordinator. Jerry was in the break room when I entered, heating a frozen burrito in the microwave that made a sound like a dying engine. He's 58 years old, beer belly, military-cut gray hair, and the permanent exhaustion of someone who's worked this shift for too long. Quiet nights so far, he said, without taking his eyes off the microwave. But there's a storm warning coming from Kansas. It'll hit Chicago around 4 in the morning. Great, I said, dropping my bag on the chair. How many flights will be affected? 17 arrivals, 23 departures. I already warned ground control to start repositioning. I sat at my station. 4 monitors formed a wall of bluish light in front of me. The one on the left showed the real-time fleet tracking map, 57 planes scattered across the country, each represented by a small blinking icon. The middle one was OptiCore, with its infinite lines of green code on a black background. The third monitored communications with control towers. The fourth, emails and alerts. I logged in. The screen blinked. My face reflected in the monitor for a second, brown eyes too sunken, expression lines that didn't exist 5 years ago, brown hair tied in a tight ponytail that was already hurting my scalp before midnight. 37 years old. Single. No children. No plants because I'd kill them. No cat because it would be cruel to leave it alone 16 hours a day. What do I have? This job. These screens. The strange and addictive satisfaction of making an impossible system work against all odds. Jerry, I said, typing the first commands of the night. That problem with the catering supplier in Detroit was resolved? Resolved at 8 at night. The 6 in the morning flight will have the usual sandwiches. And the extra crew we requested for Tampa? Confirmed. 2 co-pilots and 3 flight attendants arrive at the hotel at 2 in the morning. Perfect. My fingers flew over the keyboard. I checked fuel levels, confirmed completed maintenance, adjusted cabin cleaning schedules. Small details that, if ignored, could create a domino effect capable of paralyzing entire operations. A red light blinked on the second monitor. Shit. What happened? Jerry approached, still chewing his burrito. We have an A320 stuck in Miami. Mechanical problem. Hydraulic failure. That's the equipment for Flight 447 to Boston? Exactly. Departure scheduled for 5:15. If we don't resolve this now, it's 230 furious passengers and a cascade of cancellations. I typed quickly, accessing our inventory of available aircraft. There was a 737 in preventive maintenance in Fort Lauderdale that was scheduled to return to service at 7 in the morning. Jerry, called a maintenance team in Fort Lauderdale. I need that 737 cleared in 3 hours. not 6. Rachel, they're going to say it's impossible. Then you'll say I said they can do it. And if they really can't, I'll reposition the equipment from Orlando, but then the Orlando to Atlanta flight is delayed, which means the Atlanta to Chicago is delayed, and suddenly we have 15 flights in a domino effect. So they'll manage. Jerry sighed and picked up the phone. While he negotiated with maintenance, I was already reorganizing the crew. The original pilot and co-pilot of 447 were in a layover hotel in Miami. I needed a different crew if we were going to use the Fort Lauderdale plane. I typed commands into the system, checking availability, regulatory rest time, aircraft certifications. I found a captain in West Palm Beach, co-pilot in Boca Raton, 3 flight attendants scattered throughout the region. I sent automatic messages to everyone. In 15 minutes, I had confirmations. The red light turned yellow, then green. Problem solved. It's 1:20 in the morning. The storm over Kansas is moving faster than predicted. I'll need to start repositioning planes earlier. I grab my third coffee of the night, a brown bitter substance that tastes like liquid regret, and prepare for the next wave of chaos. My station phone rings. It's rare. Usually everything is resolved by email or through the internal system. Operations. Rachel speaking. Rachel, it's Marcus from the control tower in Chicago. We have a problem. Marcus is one of the most experienced controllers. He's worked there for 20 years. If he's calling me directly, it's because the situation is serious. Talk. The main runway needs to close for emergency inspection. A United 777 reported debris on the runway during landing. Could be bird debris or something that fell from an aircraft. We need at least 45 minutes to check and clear. My stomach sinks. Chicago is our main hub. 23 flights scheduled to take off in the next 2 hours. When does it close? In 10 minutes. Shit, Marcus. 10 minutes. FAA protocol, Rachel. You know how it is. I hang up the phone and I'm already typing before I even fully process the information. Jerry notices my body language and approaches. Problem. Chicago closes in 10 minutes. 45 minutes minimum. Jesus Christ. I access the fleet map. All planes that are en route to Chicago in the next few hours need to be diverted or put on hold. But holding consumes fuel. And fuel costs money. And passengers in planes waiting in the air get furious. I start working. I divert 3 flights to Milwaukee, 2 to Indianapolis, 1 to Detroit. I adjust routes, calculate additional fuel needed, notify the control towers of the alternate destination airports, reorganize boarding gates, reassess passenger connections. My fingers never stop moving. OptiCore resists. It always resists when you try to change too much at once. The screen freezes for 3 seconds that feel like 3 hours. Then it comes back. I keep typing. 20 minutes later, all flights are redirected. The crews have been notified. The passengers don't know yet. They'll find out when they arrive at the gate and see the notice of arrival airport change. There will be complaints. There always are. But nobody's going to die. Nobody's going to run out of fuel over Lake Michigan. And that's what matters. At 3:30 in the morning, the storm finally hits Chicago. It's not as bad as predicted, but it's bad enough. Winds of 65 kilometers per hour. Reduced visibility. 2 runways closed as a precaution. Sandra, the crew coordinator, enters the operations room. She's 42 years old, 2 teenage children, and always seems 3 seconds away from a nervous breakdown. Rachel, I have 4 flight attendants stuck in a hotel in Pittsburgh. Their flight to Chicago was canceled because of the storm. They need to be on duty in Baltimore at 7 in the morning. Rent a car. A car? From Pittsburgh to Baltimore. It's a 5-hour drive. They arrive on time. Company pays for the rental and mileage. Authorize extra fuel too. The girls are going to freak out. The girls will drive or they'll lose their jobs. Their choice. Sandra sighs but picks up the phone. I know I seem like a horrible person. Maybe I am. But this job doesn't allow sentimentality. I have to move people like chess pieces. If I start thinking of them as human beings with lives and families and fatigue, I can't do what needs to be done. At 5 in the morning, the sky starts to lighten. The first commercial flights of the day are taking off on the West Coast. My shift is technically ending in an hour, but I still have 17 open situations that need resolution. Jerry approaches with a strange expression on his face. Rachel, you need to see this. See what? I'm busy. It's an email. From corporate office. Something in his voice makes me stop typing. I look at him. Jerry looks uncomfortable, almost. Worried. What email, Jerry? Mandatory meeting. Today at 2 in the afternoon. All operations leadership. 2 in the afternoon? I'll be sleeping at 2 in the afternoon. I work the graveyard shift, remember? The email says mandatory attendance. No exceptions. My instinct triggers an alarm. In 13 years, there's never been a mandatory meeting at 2 in the afternoon for the night shift. Never. The night shift is forgotten. We're the invisible ones. The company only remembers we exist when something goes wrong. Who sent it? Blake Henderson. My stomach sinks. Blake Henderson. The founder's son. The heir. The spoiled prince who spent the last 10 years working on special projects that never led to anything. I've seen him in person maybe 3 times in 13 years. Always from afar, always surrounded by assistants and sycophants. Why is Blake sending emails about operational meetings? Jerry hesitates. I heard rumors. What rumors? That old Henderson is sick. Cancer. And that Blake is taking on more responsibilities. The operations room suddenly feels smaller. Hotter. The hum of the servers gets louder. Shit, I whisper. Blake Henderson taking on responsibilities is like handing the keys to a Boeing 747 to someone who just got their driver's license. The guy knows nothing. He was born rich, grew up rich, never worked a real day in his life. And now he's going to run an airline? You'll have to go to the meeting, Rachel, Jerry says. It's mandatory. I know. But a part of me already knows. Already senses. Mandatory meeting with little notice. New and inexperienced leadership taking control. This is the classic recipe for stupid changes made by people who don't understand how things really work. I've seen this happen at other companies. Outside consultants are hired. Processes are optimized. People with real knowledge are fired and replaced by automated systems that don't work. And then, inevitably, everything collapses. I close my eyes for a second. When I open them, the screens are still there, blinking in green and amber. 17 open situations. Planes scattered across the country waiting for my instructions. I finish my shift. I solve every problem. I pass the baton to the day's shift team. And then I drive home while the world wakes up, knowing that in less than 8 hours I'll be sitting in a meeting room finding out exactly how bad things are going to get. Because they always get bad when people who don't understand start messing with systems that work. And OptiCore, with all its fragility and complexity, is about to be discovered by people who think they can fix what isn't broken. I arrived home at 7:15 in the morning. My apartment is in a 3-story building in Bloomfield, 20 minutes drive from the office. It's a small place. 1 bedroom, a living room that merges with a tiny kitchen, a bathroom with 70s tiles that I never bothered to renovate. The blackout curtains were closed, transforming the apartment into a dark cave. I invested in these curtains years ago. When you work the graveyard shift, sunlight is your enemy. I took off my shoes, threw my bag on the couch, went straight to the bathroom. In the mirror, my reflection looked exactly like I felt, exhausted. Deep dark circles, pale skin, hair with that oily texture of someone who spent 8 hours under fluorescent light. I took a quick shower, put on old pajamas, set the alarm for 1 in the afternoon. That would give me exactly 5 hours and 40 minutes of sleep before needing to wake up, get ready and go back to the office for this mysterious meeting. But I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, looking at the ceiling, my brain still racing. It's always like this after an intense shift. My mind keeps solving problems that no longer exist, reorganizing imaginary planes, calculating alternative routes for crises already overcome. I grabbed my phone, opened corporate email. There it was. Blake Henderson's email, sent at 4:37 in the morning to all operations leadership. Subject: mandatory meeting, new strategic direction. Team: as many of you already know, my father, Richard Henderson, is temporarily stepping away from his duties due to medical issues. During this period, I will assume operational leadership of Skybridge Airlines. In recent weeks, I have conducted a deep analysis of our processes and identified several opportunities for optimization and modernization. It's time to evolve. Mandatory meeting today at 2 p.m. in the main conference room. Bring updated data from your respective areas. Let's build the future together. Blake Henderson, Chief Operating Officer. I read it 3 times. Each time, my stomach tightened more. Deep analysis of our processes. Blake wouldn't recognize an operational process if it hit him in the face with an FAA regulations manual. Opportunities for optimization. That's corporate language for, I'm going to fire people and cut costs without understanding the impact. It's time to evolve. Translation: I'm going to ruin everything that's working because I need to prove my worth. I threw my phone on the nightstand, closed my eyes, tried to turn off my brain. It didn't work. At 9 in the morning, I gave up trying to sleep. Got up, made coffee that was too strong, sat on the couch with my laptop. I opened the unofficial WhatsApp group of the operations team. There were already 47 new messages. Marcus, traffic control. Chicago, does anyone know what this meeting is about? Sandra, crew coordination. I heard they're going to outsource the crew sector. James, maintenance. Miami, outsource? They're going to outsource maintenance? That's illegal. Sandra, not maintenance, idiot. Crew coordination. Lydia, operations. Atlanta, my boss said they're going to implement a new system. Something with artificial intelligence. Marcus, AI? To do what exactly? Lydia, I don't know. Optimize routes or something like that. Jerry, my supervisor Rachel, are you seeing this? I typed quickly. Rachel, I'm seeing it. Nobody knows anything concrete yet. Let's wait for the meeting. But inside, I was already putting the puzzle together. New system. Artificial intelligence. Optimization. Outsourcing. They were all pieces of the same game. A game I'd already seen other companies play. And it always ended the same way, with experienced people being replaced by algorithms that didn't understand the real complexities, and with operational disasters that cost millions to fix. I closed the laptop, went to the kitchen, ate 2 pieces of toast without tasting them, went back to the bedroom, forced myself to lie down for at least a few more hours. This time, I managed to sleep. A heavy sleep, full of strange dreams about planes falling from the sky and computer screens showing error messages in blinking red. The alarm went off at 1 in the afternoon. I got up with a heavy head, that horrible feeling of having slept too little and at the wrong time. I took another shower. Chose clothes carefully, black dress pants, white button-down shirt, gray blazer. It's not my normal style. Normally, I wear jeans and a t-shirt because I work alone in a windowless bunker. But meetings with corporate leadership require different armor. I tied my hair in a professional bun, put on a little makeup to hide the dark circles. Looked at myself in the mirror. I looked like a person who had control of the situation. Looked like a confident and competent leader. Inside, I had a bad feeling that was growing every minute. I arrived at the office at 2:15 before. The parking lot was fuller than normal for this hour. All the operations leaders who normally work different shifts were there at the same time. The main conference room was on the 4th floor, the only part of the building with real windows. I rarely went up there. My world was the basement, the corridors without natural light, the server rooms. When I got off the elevator, I heard voices. The conference room door was open. I entered. The room was large, with a dark wooden table in the center that seated about 20 people. Huge windows gave a view of part of the airport runway. You could see planes taking off in the distance, small and silent from that distance. There were already about 12 people seated. I recognized most. Jerry was there, looking uncomfortable in a wrinkled dress shirt. Sandra was nervously biting her nails. Marcus from Chicago, James from Miami, Lydia from Atlanta. Other operations supervisors I only knew from emails and phone calls at 3 in the morning. I sat near Jerry. He shot me a look that clearly said, "This is going to be bad." At 2 o'clock sharp, Blake Henderson entered. He was exactly as I remembered from the few times I'd seen him in person. Tall, perfectly styled blonde hair with that expensive cut that looks careless but costs $300, square jaw, teeth too white. He wore gray tailored pants, a white shirt without a tie, 2 buttons open, and a casual navy blue blazer that probably cost more than my monthly salary. Next to him was a woman I'd never seen. She must have been in her early 30s. Platinum blonde with strategically messy highlights. Beige pantsuit too tight to be comfortable. High heels that made a sharp sound on the wooden floor. She carried an iPad as if it were the sacred tablet of laws. "Good afternoon, team." Blake opened a wide, rehearsed smile. "Thank you for coming. I know some of you had to adjust your schedules. I appreciate the flexibility." Flexibility. As if it were optional. As if mandatory wasn't in bold in the email. "I want to introduce Vanessa Coldwell." Blake gestured to the woman next to him. Vanessa is an operational efficiency consultant. She worked with Delta, with United, and recently helped a European aviation startup reduce operational costs by 38%. Vanessa nodded, smiling. It was a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Cold blue eyes that scanned us as if we were being evaluated and classified into categories. Useful, disposable, obstacle. 38%, Blake repeated as if it were a magic number. "Imagine what we can do here." Jerry coughed. "Blake, with all due respect, different airlines have different structures. What works at Delta doesn't necessarily. This is exactly the kind of mentality we need to change, Jerry." Blake cut him off, still smiling but with something sharp beneath the surface. The "we've always done it this way" mentality. That doesn't move us forward. Vanessa stepped forward. Her voice was high-pitched, articulated with excessive precision, like a teacher talking to especially slow children. In the last 3 weeks, I've deeply analyzed Skybridge's operations. And I found, how can I say, systemic inefficiencies. She touched the iPad. A presentation appeared on the large screen on the wall. The first slide said, Skybridge 2.0, Modernization and Profit. My God. She had made a PowerPoint presentation. With gradient font. Look, Vanessa continued, moving to the next slide. You operate with a legacy system called OptiCore. Correct. Silence in the room. Correct? She repeated, looking directly at me. I realized everyone was looking at me. Of course. I was the only person in the room who actually used OptiCore every day. Correct? I said, keeping my voice neutral. OptiCore was developed in 2003. It's 22 years old. In technology, that's equivalent to the Jurassic era. Vanessa laughed at her own comment. Nobody else laughed. The system is slow, not scalable, requires extensive training, and here's the critical point, depends heavily on manual human intervention. She clicked to the next slide. A graph comparing manual work hours versus ideal automation. Rachel, how many hours do you work per week? Vanessa looked at me. Depends on the week. Between 50 and 60. And your annual salary is? The room fell silent. It was an invasive question. Inappropriate. But Vanessa was waiting for an answer, her iPad ready to take notes. 85,000, I said. It wasn't a secret. Leadership salaries were relatively well known. 85,000 a year to operate a system that could be automated. Vanessa typed on the iPad. Now multiply that by the 3 people on different shifts who essentially do the same job. That's $255,000 annually. Plus benefits, of course. My blood ran cold. What are you suggesting, Vanessa? I asked, already knowing the answer. She smiled. I'm suggesting we enter the 21st century. Blake stood up, walking to the window with his hands in his pockets, as if he were in an expensive perfume commercial. He looked at the runway for a dramatic moment before turning to us. Skybridge is bleeding money, he said, his voice losing that animated tone and gaining something more serious. You think I don't know? Think my father didn't tell me before passing command? We're operating with a profit margin of 2%. 2. Delta operates with 7. Southwest with 9. Blake, I said, leaning forward. Low margins are normal for mid-sized airlines. We don't have the economies of scale of the big. Exactly. He slapped his palm on the table, making Sandra jump in her chair. We don't have economies of scale. So we need to compensate with efficiency. Radical efficiency. Vanessa clicked to the next slide. A beautiful image of a modern dashboard, all in blue and white, with clean graphics and real-time numbers. This is Skyflow, she announced. A state-of-the-art operational management system based on artificial intelligence. It uses machine learning to predict delays before they happen, optimizes routes in real time, automatically redistributes resources, and here's the revolutionary part, learns from every decision, getting smarter every day. I looked at the image on the screen. It was beautiful, modern, impressive, and completely useless for what we really needed. Vanessa, I said, keeping my voice calm. AI systems are great in theory. But aviation is an industry of exceptions. Every day brings unique situations that algorithms can't predict. Storms that change direction in minutes. Pilots who get sick. Birds that collide with turbines. Passengers who have heart attacks in the middle of a flight. How exactly does an AI deal with? The AI learns. Vanessa interrupted me. It analyzes millions of data points. Identifies patterns that humans can't see. And makes decisions in milliseconds. Wrong decisions in milliseconds, I countered. I've already seen automated systems cancel flights because they couldn't process an unexpected variable. I've already seen algorithms reallocate crews in ways that violated FAA regulations. I've already seen. Rachel. Blake spoke my name like a teacher tired of a stubborn student. I understand your resistance. Change is scary, especially when you've invested so much time in mastering an old system. But you need to trust the process. Trust the process? I almost laughed. Blake, with all due respect, do you know how many times OptiCore saved our operation from total collapse last year? How many times I had to make manual interventions that no algorithm could make because they required understanding contexts that aren't in any database? How many times? Vanessa asked, typing on the iPad. Do you have that number? It's not a number I track because... Then it's anecdotal. She smiled. Feelings. Intuition. Very human, but not measurable data. I felt my face heat up. Jerry put his hand on my arm, a silent warning for me not to explode. Marcus, the Chicago controller, cleared his throat. Can I ask a question? Has this Skyflow been tested in real operations? Or is it just theory? Excellent question. Blake pointed at him as if he were on a game show. Skyflow is being used by Air Euro, a regional airline in France. They reduced delays by 22% in the first quarter. Air Euro operates 17 planes, I said. We operate 57. It's not the same scale. And France has different airport infrastructure, different regulations. There's always an excuse, isn't there, Rachel? Blake crossed his arms. It's too small, it's too big, it's too different. If it were up to you, we'd still be using 80s computers. If it were up to me, we wouldn't be betting the entire operation on an untested system just because it looks modern. The silence that followed was thick. Vanessa and Blake exchanged glances. I crossed my arms, my jaw tense. James, the Miami maintenance supervisor, timidly raised his hand. How long would this implementation take? Because our maintenance team already works with specific software that integrates with OptiCore, would we have to retrain everyone? 6 months for complete implementation, Vanessa answered. But the transition would be gradual. We start with a pilot at a smaller base, let's say Atlanta, and expand from there. Lydia, from Atlanta, looked alarmed. Wait, Atlanta would be the guinea pig? Pilot, Vanessa corrected. Not guinea pig. Pilot. And during those 6 months, I asked, what happens when Skyflow fails? Because it will fail. All systems fail. What's the backup? OptiCore remains as backup during the transition, Blake said. And who's going to operate both systems simultaneously? Because I guarantee that nobody in this room has the mental capacity to manage 2 completely different systems at the same time under pressure. That's why we're bringing in Skyflow consultants to support during the transition. Consultants. I shook my head. Consultants who don't know our fleet, our airports, our crews, our operational peculiarities. Consultants who will leave after 6 months with their fat checks while we're left with the consequences. You're being extremely negative, Rachel. Blake's voice gained a sharp edge. And frankly, it's starting to worry me if you're the right person to lead during this transition. The room fell into absolute silence. I stared at him. Are you threatening me? I'm saying I need leaders who embrace change, not obstacles. Sandra intervened nervously. Blake, maybe what Rachel is saying is that we need a more detailed plan. More testing before. We have a detailed plan, Vanessa interrupted. 240 pages of operational analysis, financial projections, implementation timelines. All based on concrete data. Data from a French airline with 17 planes, I murmured. What? Blake turned sharply to me. Nothing. No, Rachel. You said something. What? I took a deep breath. Jerry was making a face that said, for God's sake, shut up, but I couldn't. I said that your data comes from a completely different operation, and that you're betting the stability of an entire airline on an unproven system because it looks pretty in a PowerPoint presentation. Blake turned red. You know what your problem is, Rachel? You think you're irreplaceable. You think that because you spent 13 years typing codes into an old computer, you're the only person on the planet capable of doing this job. It's not about being irreplaceable. It's about understanding that complex systems can't be replaced overnight by. Enough. Blake raised his hand. Meeting adjourned. Vanessa will schedule individual sessions with each of you to discuss your roles in the transition. Rachel, you stay. One by one, the others left. Jerry shot me a worried look before leaving. The door closed. I was alone in the room with Blake and Vanessa. Blake sat in the chair at the head of the table, fingers interlaced, looking at me with an expression that was half disappointment, half something darker. Rachel, I'm going to be direct with you. My father always said you were the best he'd ever seen. That you had a gift for this shit. That you saved the company more times than anyone else. I said nothing. But talent without adaptability is useless. The world has changed. The industry has changed. And you're stuck in 2003 along with that obsolete system. OptiCore isn't obsolete. It's stable. It's reliable. It's a dinosaur. Vanessa finally spoke. And dinosaurs went extinct for a reason. I looked at her. She held my gaze without blinking, her face perfectly composed in an expression of professional superiority. You have 2 options, Blake said. Option 1, you join us. You lead the transition from OptiCore to Skyflow. You work with the consultants, you train your team, you embrace this change. And when everything is working, you'll be the director of operations of modernized Skybridge. My heart skipped for a second. Director of Operations. A position above my current one. More responsibility. More money. And option 2? I asked, already knowing the answer. Option 2, you resist. You become a problem. And problems need to be solved. Blake stood up. I'm not asking you to agree with me on everything, Rachel. I'm asking you to trust that maybe, just maybe, there are people in this world who know things you don't know. He picked up his phone from the table and walked toward the door. Vanessa followed him, but stopped before leaving, turning to me. For your information, she said with a cold smile, I have an MBA from Wharton and 10 years of experience in operational optimization. I've worked with the biggest companies in the world. So when you say I don't understand, what you really mean is that you feel threatened. No, I replied calmly. What I mean is that an MBA doesn't teach what to do when a pilot has a panic attack in the middle of a storm over Kansas. Experience teaches. And you don't have that experience. She opened her mouth to respond, but Blake called her from the hallway. She left without saying anything more. I was left alone in the conference room, looking at the screen where the Skyflow presentation was still projected. Beautiful dashboard. Impressive graphics. Promises of efficiency and profit. And deep in my soul, I knew, the way you know when a storm is coming before the clouds even appear, that this was going to go very, very wrong. I left the conference room with shaky legs and drove home on autopilot. My head was spinning with the conversation, the veiled threats, Blake's ultimatum. When I got home, it was almost 4 in the afternoon. My shift would start at 11 at night. I should be sleeping, preparing for another dawn, keeping planes in the air. But sleep was impossible. I sat on the couch with my laptop and opened my personal email. There was a message from Jerry sent 15 minutes ago. Rachel, don't do anything rash. We're all fucked, but you especially. I know you want to fight. Don't fight. Not yet. Jay. I replied, I won't fight. I'll do my job. But it was a lie. Because while I was typing, my brain was already working on another level, connecting dots, identifying vulnerabilities, planning. 13 years. 13 years I gave to this company. 13 years of dawns, horrible coffees, decisions made in seconds that saved lives and millions of dollars. And now a rich boy with perfect teeth and zero real understanding wanted to replace me with an algorithm because it seemed more modern. No, not at all. I spent the next few hours doing something I'd never done before. I documented everything. Every peculiarity of OptiCore, every workaround I'd developed over the years, every critical situation where my manual intervention had prevented disasters. I created spreadsheets, timelines, detailed reports of incidents that never made it to official records because I had resolved them before they became visible problems. I saved everything in 3 different places: my personal laptop, an external drive, and a cloud account that the company didn't have access to. At 10 at night, I got ready for work. Jeans, black t-shirt, comfortable sneakers. My normal uniform. I tied my hair in a tight ponytail. Looked at my reflection in the mirror. Let's do this, I said to myself. I arrived at the office at 10:40. Jerry was already there, along with 2 consultants I'd never seen before. One was a guy about 25 years old, too thin, wearing a t-shirt that said, "Tech changes everything," and holding a laptop covered with startup stickers. The other was a woman about 30 years old, hair in a ballerina bun, square-framed glasses, permanent expression of someone smelling something bad. Rachel. Jerry stood up quickly. These are the Skyflow consultants. Devin and Priya. They're going to observe your operations tonight. Observe, I repeated. It's part of the evaluation phase, Priya said, her voice thin and nasal. We need to understand your current workflows to map the transition to Skyflow. Sure. I forced a smile. Welcome to the graveyard shift. Coffee is in the break room. Don't touch anything without asking permission first. I sat at my station. The 4 monitors blinked to life. Green, amber, blue. My kingdom. Devin approached, looking at the screens with a child's fascination in a toy store. Wow, is this really raw code? Like, no graphical interface. It's raw code, I said, starting the opening commands of the shift. Archaic, he murmured, but with an almost reverent tone. It's like seeing a living dinosaur. I ignored the comment. My fingers flew over the keyboard. Fleet check. Fuel status. Aircraft positioning. Weather forecast. Cruise on regulatory rest. Available gates. Everything normal. Everything working. How many lines of code do you type per shift? Priya asked, holding a tablet. I don't count. Approximately. Depends on the night. 1,000. 5,000. 10,000 when shit hits the fan. She wrote something down. And how long does it take to train someone to do what you do? 6 months for the basics. 2 years to be really competent. 5 years to be good. I looked at her. 10 years to be able to do this in your sleep, which is essentially what I do. Devin laughed. With Skyflow, you don't even need training. The AI does everything. Intuitive interface. Anyone can operate it. Anyone, I repeated slowly. Great. So when an A320 loses pressurization over Colorado at 3 in the morning and needs to make an emergency landing at the nearest airport, but the nearest airport is closed due to fog, and the second nearest doesn't have adequate emergency equipment, and the pilot is panicking, and the passengers are hyperventilating, and I have exactly 90 seconds to find a solution before people start passing out. Anyone can handle that. Silence. Because I handled that. February 2023. At 3:17 in the morning. And the AI wouldn't have saved those 238 people. I saved them. Priya coughed. Extreme incidents are statistical outliers. The AI is designed to optimize normal operations. Aviation doesn't have normal operations. Aviation is a constant series of variable emergencies that you need to prevent from becoming disasters. My monitor blinked. Red alert. Speaking of emergencies, I said, already typing before even fully reading the message. We have a problem. Jerry approached. What happened? Flight 891, 737 from Boston to Miami. Right engine with abnormal temperature indication. Pilot requesting immediate return to Boston. My fingers flew. I checked air traffic around Boston. 3 planes on final approach. 2 taxiing. 1 holding. Okay, I'm prioritizing 891 for immediate landing. Runway 04R, direct approach, skipping the line. I typed quick commands. Notifying Boston Control Tower. Alerting ground emergency crew. Repositioning the next flight, scheduled to leave Boston in 15 minutes. Wait, Devin interrupted. You just changed the entire landing sequence? Yes. Don't you need approval? Mechanical emergency has automatic priority. FAA, Regulation 14 CFR 91.3. The pilot in command has final authority. If he says he needs to land now, I make him land now. Priya was typing frantically on her tablet. How would Skyflow handle this, Devin? Devin hesitated. Well, it would detect the temperature anomaly through telemetric data. And then, trigger emergency protocol. Which protocol? I asked, still typing. Return to origin airport? Landing at nearest airport? Diversion to airport with better maintenance infrastructure? Each choice has different implications. Fuel, air traffic, ground emergency capability, spare parts availability, passenger accommodation if we need a replacement plane. Does the AI decide all this in context? The AI learns from each situation. Devin answered, but his voice was uncertain. So the first time it makes a mistake? Great. Would love to be on that plane the first time. My second monitor showed confirmation from Boston Tower. 891 was on direct approach, maximum priority. Ambulances and fire trucks already positioned. 6 minutes later, the 891 icon touched the ground. Safe landing. Holy shit, Jerry sighed. Good work, Rach. It's the job. I was already reorganizing the next 5 Boston flights, adjusting schedules, notifying gates, reallocating ground crews. Devin, how long would Skyflow take to do everything I just did? He bit his lip. It depends. I need to check the parameters of. I took 8 minutes. From initial alert to plane on the ground. 8 minutes. I looked at him. And you don't even know how to answer the question. The rest of the night was relatively quiet. A storm in Dallas that I redirected easily. 2 pilots who canceled at the last minute, and I replaced before they became delays. A minor baggage system failure in Atlanta that Jerry resolved with a phone call. Devin and Priya stayed until 3 in the morning, then gave up and left, saying they would return the next night to continue the evaluation. When they left, Jerry sat next to me. They have no idea, do they? He said. Not at all. What are you going to do? I looked at the monitors. 57 planes blinking across the country. Thousands of people sleeping in uncomfortable seats, trusting they would reach their destinations. I'm going to do my job, I said. Until I can't anymore. The next 2 weeks were slow torture. Devin and Priya showed up every night, asking increasingly stupid questions, writing everything down, filming my screens, trying to map my work process. Blake sent daily emails about the progress of the transition. Meetings were scheduled and rescheduled. Vanessa appeared twice to do cultural change workshops that were basically propaganda sessions about how wonderful Skyflow was. And then came the announcement. An email from Blake to the entire company. Subject: Welcome to the future. Skyflow activates in 30 days. Team Skybridge. It is with immense pride that I announce, in 30 days, we will make the complete transition from OptiCore to Skyflow. Atlanta will be our pilot base, followed by rapid implementation at other bases. This is a historic change that will position Skybridge as a leader in operational innovation. Rachel Morrow will lead the transition as Senior Director of Operations. Thank you for everyone's dedication. Blake Henderson. I read the email 3 times. Senior Director of Operations. He hadn't even asked me. Simply announced. As if I had agreed. As if I would bow down and accept this poison promotion. I picked up the phone and called Blake. He answered on the second ring. Rachel. Saw the announcement? Exciting, right? You didn't ask me if I wanted this promotion. Of course I do. It's a recognition of your talent and you're holding me hostage, Blake. You promote me publicly, so I can't refuse without looking ungrateful or incompetent. Silence on the other end. Rachel. His voice became hard. You have 30 days. You can do this the easy way, collaborating and keeping your job, or the hard way. Your choice. I choose the third option. There is no third. I hung up. Jerry was looking at me with wide eyes. Rachel, what are you going to do? Something I should have done a long time ago. I opened my personal laptop. I'm going to expose this whole farce. I spent the next 3 days building a complete dossier. I documented every interaction with Blake and Vanessa, every false statement about Skyflow's capabilities, every misleading comparison with Air Euro, whose operation I had researched and discovered was infinitely simpler than ours. More importantly, I documented 37 incidents from the last 2 years where manual human intervention had prevented disasters. Incidents that no AI could have managed because they required contextual judgment, historical knowledge, and understanding of variables that didn't exist in any database. I also discovered something interesting. Vanessa Coldwell had been fired from her last 2 consulting contracts, one by an airline in Germany, another by a logistics company in the United States. In both cases, for irreconcilable differences over methodology. Translation: she had screwed up operations and been fired before the damage got too big. And Devin, the young tech genius, had worked for the company that developed Skyflow. Very clear conflict of interest that nobody had mentioned. I compiled everything into a 40-page document with evidence, timestamps, emails, audio recordings, in states where it was legal to record, operational data. And then I made 3 copies. One I sent to Skybridge's board of directors. Richard Henderson, the sick founder, still had a seat there, along with 5 other directors who had an interest in not seeing the company collapse. The second copy I sent to the FAA, not as a formal complaint, but as an operational safety concern that they were required to investigate. The third I kept. 2 days later, I received a call at 7 in the morning. I had just arrived home from my shift. Rachel Morrow? A male voice I didn't recognize. Who is this? Michael Torres from the board of directors. I received your document. My heart raced. And I need you to come to a meeting. Today. Noon. Not optional. Who else will be there? The entire board. Blake. And you. At 11:45, I was at Skybridge's corporate office in Manhattan. A completely different building from the operations bunker in Newark. Here there was marble, glass, people in suits, air conditioning that actually worked. The board meeting room was on the 22nd floor. Impressive view of the city. Mahogany table that probably cost more than my car. 6 people were seated around the table. I recognized Michael Torres, a Latino man about 60 years old, gray hair, serious expression. Next to him was an Asian middle-aged woman I knew was Patricia Chin, CFO. The other 4 I only knew from corporate photos. And at the head, looking smaller than his photos suggested, was Richard Henderson, the founder, the dinosaur, the man who had built this airline with dubious loans and pure stubbornness in the 70s. He was too thin, pale face, bald from chemotherapy, but his eyes, brown, deep, intelligent, still had that gleam of someone who had seen everything and survived. Blake was on the other side of the table, with Vanessa next to him. Both looked tense. Sit down, Miss Morrow, Richard Henderson said. His voice was hoarse, tired, but still carried authority. I sat. My son told me you're being difficult. Richard coughed. Resisting change. Causing problems. With all due respect, Mr. Henderson, your son is about to destroy everything you built because he thinks an algorithm can replace human experience. Blake slammed his hand on the table. That's Riddick. Silence. Richard didn't even look at him. Let her speak. I took a deep breath. It was now or never. Mr. Henderson, in the last 13 years, I've kept your airline running through crises you don't even know happened. Because I resolved them before they became headlines. Storms, mechanical failures, human errors, cyber attacks, unofficial strikes, pandemics. I looked at Blake. Your son wants to replace that knowledge with an AI system that was tested at an airline with 17 planes. We have 57. The scale isn't comparable. The complexity isn't comparable. And when, not if, but when Skyflow fails, people will die. You're being dramatic, Vanessa intervened. The AI has safeguards. Safeguards that were programmed by people who never worked a day in real aviation operations. I cut her off. Devin worked for the company that created Skyflow. Conflict of interest. You were fired from your last 2 contracts for incompetence. And Blake. I looked at him. Blake spent the last 10 years doing nothing while people like me kept this company alive. Blake turned red. You can't. Let her finish, Richard said again, his voice a whip. I opened my folder and distributed printed copies of my dossier around the table. Page 12, pressurization incident over Colorado. Page 18, engine failure over Boston. Page 23, storm that closed Chicago. Page 30, cyber attack on the baggage system. In each case, human intervention saved the situation. In each case, an algorithm would have failed because it didn't have the necessary context. Patricia Chen, the CFO, was flipping through the document attentively. These savings numbers. You're saying your intervention saved the company from losses of. She stopped at a page. 15 million in a single quarter? Conservatively. Not counting reputation damage, passenger lawsuits, FAA fines. Michael Torres looked at Blake. Did you know this? These are just allegations without. It has timestamps, I said. It has system records. It has communications with control towers. It has everything. And the FAA is reviewing everything now because I sent them a copy too. The room fell into deadly silence. Richard Henderson looked at me for a long moment. Then, surprisingly, he smiled. It was a tired smile, but genuine. You have courage, girl. Always knew it. He coughed again. Blake, you're my son and I love you. But you're an idiot. Dad. A spoiled idiot who thinks reading a few articles about AI qualifies you to make operational decisions. Richard picked up the dossier. Patricia, how much were we planning to spend on this Skyflow implementation? 12 million in the first year. 25 over the next 3. And how much did we spend on Rachel's salary last year? With benefits, approximately 110,000. Richard threw the dossier on the table in front of Blake. You wanted to spend 12 million to replace someone who saves us 15 million a year. Basic math, son. You failed. Blake was white. Dad, I was trying to modernize. You were trying to prove your worth by destroying what works. Richard stood up slowly, leaning on the table. Meeting adjourned. Blake, you're suspended from any operational decisions until further notice. Vanessa, he looked at her, your contract is cancelled. Leave the building in the next 2 hours. Vanessa opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. But I have a 6-month contract, which has a termination clause for poor performance. Patricia handles the paperwork. Richard turned to me. Rachel, you continue exactly where you are, doing exactly what you do. And your salary just doubled. I blinked. Mr. Henderson, you saved my company more times than I can count. And I didn't even know. That ends now. He extended his hand. Thank you for your service. And for your courage to tell me the truth when nobody else did. I shook his hand. It was cold, bony, but the grip was firm. 2 hours later, I was back in my apartment. I sat on the couch and started laughing. Laughing with relief, with exhaustion, with a victory I wasn't sure I'd achieve. My phone rang. Jerry. Rachel. What the hell did you do? There are rumors flying all over the office. I saved our jobs. How? I documented everything and showed it to who matters. Silence. Then, you're a legend, woman. A fucking legend. I hung up and looked out the window. The sun was beginning to set. In a few hours, I'd be back in the bunker, back to my screens, back to the invisible work of keeping planes in the air. But now, finally, people knew I existed. 3 months later, Blake was transferred to an administrative position without real decision-making power, something like Director of Strategic Innovation, which was basically a fancy title to keep him away from operations. Vanessa tried to sue the company. The lawsuit was withdrawn when they discovered her previous dismissals and undeclared conflicts of interest. Devin went back to the software company, probably to sell Skyflow to another victim. And me? I continued doing what I always did. Working the dawns, drinking horrible coffee, typing codes into an old system that nobody but me really understands. With one difference. Now Richard Henderson shows up at the bunker once a month. He sits in a chair in the corner, observes for a few hours, asks intelligent questions. You know, he told me one night, when I started this company, it was just me and a rented 737. I loaded baggage myself. I cleaned the plane myself between flights. He looked at the monitors. I thought I'd lost that. That contact with real work. With the people who actually make the shit work. You never lost it, I said. You just got distracted for a while. He laughed. My son hates me now. He'll get over it. Or not. But the company will survive either way. Because of you. Because of people like me. Jerry, Sandra, Marcus, James. All the invisibles who keep this machine running while executives make PowerPoint presentations. Richard was silent for a moment. Then he said, when I die, and it's going to be soon, don't give me that look. There's a letter in my office. It's a recommendation to the board. Recommending you as my replacement. I stopped typing. What? You think Blake can run this company? He can barely run a meeting. But you? You understand the heart of it. You understand that aviation isn't about profits and spreadsheets. It's about moving people safely from one place to another. Everything else is secondary. Mr. Henderson, I don't have an MBA. I don't have executive experience. You just kept this company alive for 13 years without anyone noticing. Seems like enough qualification to me. He stood up slowly. Think about it. You have time. But I didn't have much time. Richard Henderson died 6 weeks later. Pancreatic cancer, stage 4. Fast and brutal. The funeral was on a rainy October day. The entire company attended. Blake gave a tearful speech about legacy and honor. Vanessa didn't even show up. I stood in the back, wearing my only black suit, watching as they buried the dinosaur. 3 days later, the board met. Richard's letter was read. And now, 6 months after that, here I am. I continue working the dawns. I didn't leave my station. But now I also go to board meetings. Make decisions about the fleet. Negotiate contracts. Hire people who really know how to do the job, not consultants with expensive MBAs and zero real experience. Blake still works here. Still has the Henderson surname on the door. But he reports to me now. In the first meeting we had after my promotion, he looked at me with a mixture of anger and something that could be reluctant respect. You won, he said simply. It wasn't about winning, I replied. It was about not losing everything your father built. He was silent for a moment. He always liked you more than me. He loved you. But love doesn't qualify anyone to run an airline. Blake left without saying anything more. Sometimes in the quietest dawns, when I'm alone in the bunker with my monitors and my horrible coffee, I think about how everything could have been different. If I had accepted Skyflow. If I had bowed down. If I had let Blake destroy everything because it was easier than fighting. But I'm not made that way. 13 years keeping planes in the air taught me one thing. You don't let chaos win. Never. Not even when it seems impossible. Not even when they're threatening you. Not even when you're alone against people with more money, more power, more titles. You fight. You document. You expose the truth. And sometimes, not always, but sometimes, truth wins. My phone vibrates. It's a system alert. Storm forming over Texas. 3 flights need to be redirected. I smile. I put the coffee aside. My fingers find the keyboard. It's time to work. Because in the end, no matter how many titles I have now, no matter how many board meetings I attend, no matter that my salary is 6 times what it was, I'm still Rachel Morrow. And I'm still the reason planes fly when they should fall. I'm still the invisible person who keeps chaos under control. And I wouldn't change that for anything. If this story touched you in any way, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more stories of overcoming injustice. Your comments and support make all the difference for other people who may be going through similar situations. Until the next story.